One of the most heartbreaking experiences I've had in my life is wanting to get pregnant and not being able to, and trying over and over again, and then being diagnosed with irreversible infertility and premature ovarian failure, early menopause, and being told I wasn't able to. So many women come to me to help them with fertility and questions and advice because of the transformation that my life took when my doctor's bag was empty and I had those diagnoses. And through my journey and what I learn and what I teach and the products that I help create, all the products that I've created have worked together to help me in this journey reverse my own infertility, become naturally pregnant at 41, completely reversing the early menopause. And that is why I like to say that our diagnosis is not our destiny, right? Our diagnosis is not our destiny, and our prescription is not our description. Now, you may be postmenopausal, as many of my clients are, as I myself am, but you know someone who is struggling with fertility. And this fertility struggle is real and painful. So being supportive and understanding is powerful. And if you are struggling with fertility or desire to maintain your fertility as long as possible, because ovarian function is a marker of longevity, so you want to do that, you want to listen to this episode. I am interviewing Dr. Kiltz, who is a renowned fertility doctor. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Parents Magazine, The Today Show, and more, for reducing the cost of IVF to 1/3 the national average and helping shape the future of reproductive medicine. He is a diplomat of the American Board of OBGYN and fellowship trained in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. So Dr. Kiltz is the founder, director, and practicing physician at CNY Fertility. He has been a faculty member at UCSF Medical School and current clinical faculty member at the University of Syracuse Medical School. He's really a passionate advocate about the ketogenic and carnivore diet for fertility. And we have met each other in these keto communities, and I really respect what he's doing, as well as the passion that he's doing it with. This is a work of love for Dr. Kiltz, for sure. And we'll put the links to his site and his podcast, which I was blessed to be on as well, in the show notes. But let's get started with this conversation. Be right back. Well, welcome, Dr. Kiltz, to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. I'm so glad to have you here. It's an honor.
Dr. Cabeca, it's really a pleasure also to be invited to talk and share ideas on health and wellness and how everyone at any age could be healthier spiritually and physically and so many other ways, and relationships. And I'm happy to be here to talk.
Well, I am thrilled to have you here, and also because of what you're doing. You're creating you're one of the things that you've been really focused on is creating affordable fertility treatments and accessibility. And I had struggled, my audience knows that I struggled with early infertility at age 39. I was diagnosed after round after round after round of some of the highest allow, you know how we are as physicians, the highest injectable doses that we could possibly do, and then diagnosed with early menopause. And I'd say post-traumatically, but I'm pretty sure those injections, those fertility injections, took a toll on the ovaries as well as my HPA axis. Have you seen that after round of like high dose, of injections or IVF, if it created some early menopause?
Well, you said the highest doses, and I don't recommend the highest doses. I actually recommend natural
I scaled up
and low doses, because I think they're a little lighter and easier on the ovaries. But I think that the cause of infertility is all related in the fact that there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body, that we've been taught that it requires these high doses of medications. But I find that low dose and even natural cycles do really well. And we don't know the effects. I mean, some people get pregnant with the high doses, but I've always found that if you need the high doses, it's not usually the best prognosis. Now, again, the problem with medicine is we give a prognosis and we think, oh, this isn't good, or wow, it should happen. But we really don't know that much because we go in with it like, oh, it doesn't look so good. But we can't see the other side of the possibilities, how a woman in her late 30s, even 40s, even 44, I've had women where they just nothing, there are no eggs. They can't make it. They seem like they're in menopause, but they change their nutrition, they change their mindset, and quite commonly, bingo, it happens.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the beauty that I think. But high
And
doses
that
of
was my
drug,
case. That was my case. Naturally reversed it, naturally became pregnant, naturally reversed menopause for another decade. So, yeah.
and I've seen so many women that they fail, and then they give up, but then they venture either they just give up and then wow, it happens, or they start beginning to look at alternative medicine, complementary, Eastern, whatever you want to call it, but things that we weren't taught in medical school, residency, or even early practice, because we don't see it because we're so focused on drugs, dissections, and pills.
Right, right. And I want to talk about this because it's you've delved into a very, I mean, like you're so advanced in this. This is this is where there's so much alignment is that addressing the inflammation and hormone imbalance. And I want to tell for my audience, because I prefaced our conversation saying if you're trying to get pregnant at any stage, but definitely over 40, or you just want healthy menopause, healthy longevity, that ovarian function is a marker of longevity. And so what you're saying for fertility is the same thing I'm saying for menopause and is a lot of it. So improving ovarian function. So let's go into the ways that you approach your clients in improving this ovarian function.
Well, I think first that we have to understand the cause of all disease, and ovarian failure, ovarian dysfunction, infertility, and premature menopause, even in the teens and 20s, is all related to some inflammatory processes that we either breathe, drink, eat, or just are in our environment that somehow get through our skin, because the skin isn't a barrier that prevents things from coming in. Actually, it's a great spot for things to get into us.
Right.
And I learned over the years that the primary cause was really a standard American diet and lifestyle that goes along with that. Right.
Okay,
So,
how did you learn this? Because you weren't taught this in medical school. I wasn't taught this in medical school. How did you learn this?
well, about 20 plus years ago in my medical fertility practice, I began to realize that the things I was doing weren't working, even in cases where I thought this should work. And I began to look with a friend of mine and an acupuncturist at meditation and massage and acupuncture. And out of the standard practice of medicine, I personally was going through some emotional challenges, depression, where I began to instill the meditation, yoga, acupuncture to my life, personal life. And I began to utilize it in my practice of fertility. I built CNY Fertility and CNY Healing Arts. The Healing Arts is the combination of bringing in Eastern medicine to the practice. And we had acupuncturists, massage therapists, yoga specialists that, again, in our same facility, because if you have it there and we share it, they're more likely to utilize it. And if I used it, I needed to use it because I got the improvement to then share it with my clients that they can see it also. And we're seeing a lot better success. And a lot of it is because mindset was improved. And when you feel better or something, you're more apt to continue on the journey and the path to improve it. Because if you don't feel good about it, you just want to run away. Depressed, you want to stay away. And in that case, it leads to inactivity, it leads to negativity, and it leads to the incorrect nutrition for the human body. Now, I began to see some of my clients were getting pregnant on the paleo diet. And I was like, well, what is that? And if someone's getting pregnant on something, that I need to know about it. I want to know how I can help someone have a baby through non-standard medical ways. And remember, I'm a standard surgeon, IVF, all the drugs. That's what I focus. And if it wasn't proven in a randomized prospective study, I wouldn't believe it. And I tell you, you're wrong. Diet doesn't matter, and belief and happiness, I mean, positivity, that's not going to get you there. But as I began to incorporate in my life, I felt better. And when I learned about paleo, I read all about it, incorporated it, see people getting benefit. I did it. I had arthritis, psoriasis, kidney stones, migraines, bowel bleeding. I had it all. It got a little bit better. Then I found this thing called keto, and I'm like, well, what is that? And I got better on that. And we were seeing success on paleo and keto, which are high fat diets, lower to no carbohydrates in some cases. And I began to learn about fasting and intermittent fasting and things like that. And then I personally found carnivore, and it was meat, meat, salt, and water was sort of the focus I did about 12 years ago. And literally in 1 month, arthritis gone, migraines gone, bowel bleeding gone, everything gone, kidney stones gone, and I felt amazing. And then I began to share that with my clients. And I was like, wow, this is quite amazing. This is changing their experience. And when I shared it with them, it was changing them, changing me. And I've kind of just dove right into it, because if I could find something that's like will get you a baby or get your menopause better, or suddenly you won't be in menopause, my job in life as a physician is to learn everything I can to make it simple for you. And now I'd say I first wrote a book called The Fertile Secret, which is takeoff of Rhonda Byrne's book, The Secret, which is all about the power of positivity. And from there, I wrote a book on keto and then carnivore. And I kind of keep writing these things because I'm just so excited about being able to share something that you might get a baby without me, or your menopause will go away without me. That's my job in life.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing you say that. So, very similarly, the thing that I found very helpful, I call it keto-green. So that's my approach. And in my recent book, Menu Pause, there's a carnivore plan in it as well, nose to tail. So when we say there's a right way and a wrong way to do keto, there's a right way and a wrong way to do carnivore. Do you want to elaborate this for women versus men? I'm doing a series now called He Said, She Said. So I'm always asking, okay, men and women are different, right? We are different. So there's certainly things, what have you found?
Well, are how different are we? Certainly, we look different, and we act differently. Is the physiology really different? Maybe not as much as we think, although because women's hormones are cyclic every month, and men's hormones aren't quite as cyclical, right? There's the youth of testosterone over time, then wanes years though later, and I believe that we are damaged by our diet. And let's just say men and women are damaged very similarly. And I had to figure out what fuels us. And I believe that fat is the only fuel for our bodies. Sugar is not. Glucose is not a fuel for the body. It's a precursor to our fuel. And a high plant-based, low-fat diet turns out to damage every nook and cranny of our body, especially the blood vessels. And damaged blood vessels diminished oxygen and nutrient delivery to our most important organs. Number one is the brain and the hypothalamus, the thalamus and the hypothalamus and the pituitary, which are critical for LH and FSH, pulsatility, the important hormones.
Let me just explain that too. Just LH, luteinizing hormone, and FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. So in the first start, when we start bleeding, FSH is more dominant because we're stimulating follicles for ovulation, that first half of the menstrual cycle. And then the luteal hormone, the luteinizing hormone, that's going to increase for ovulation with ovulation to support that corpus luteal, like from the corpus luteum. So you want to explain that a little bit? So we understand.
Well,
And then it
well,
goes, our FSH is also a marker. If it's high over 15, we say decrease for ovarian reserve, decrease fertility. And then we have some number in the 40s for menopause.
yeah, and these aren't always, so these numbers in and of themselves aren't always accurate to mean, oh, you're in menopause. There are other things you have to look at, but the brain makes LH and FSH, which are glycoproteins, which are critical to help your ovaries mature and release an egg. Before ovulation, you're making estrogen in the ovary in order to prepare the uterine lining for an implantation of an embryo. Ovulation happens, release of the egg, related to a spike in LH and FSH, which these changes that happen release the egg, where the movement of the egg into the fallopian tube is critical. And the sperm that's supposed to meet the egg in the fallopian tube is encouraged based on estrogen function, and a normal fallopian tube with the movement of the cilia to move the egg down, and the movement of the sperm to find it. And interesting enough, there are sugars on the egg and on the sperm. Well, they're on the entire sperm and the entire egg. They're the barcodes that say you're the right sperm and the right egg. Now let's connect. Now let's fertilize. And all the changes that happen, that if you have abnormal LH and FSH, abnormal estrogen and progesterone for the female, you're going to damage all these things that are going to affect fertility. And ultimately, I believe that plant sugars are the leading reason of damage to our body, which damages the gut, the glycobiome of the gut, the vascular glycobiome, the peritoneal glycobiome. And then within the ovary, you have all of the primary eggs that are waiting to be developed that are damaged by excessive and frequent exposure to plant sugars. And I say that because you eat a standard diet, which is typically 3 to 6 plant-based meals a day. And you're eating lean meat, but you're not eating fat. And as it turns out, that fat, mostly from animals, when you eat it, it suppresses the inflammation in the gut to prevent the inflammation from getting into your bloodstream, circulating throughout your body, and getting into the ovaries and damaging them, which damages the eggs. And it sounds kind of complicated because we haven't heard this story before very much about the effects of plant glycans in excess, and how fat reduces inflammation. That's such a critical part. And so for women who typically, what's our standard diet that we grow up with?
Yeah, you're going to have oatmeal and yogurt and cereals and grains and bagels and muffins. And I'm just thinking doctor's lounge food.
It really is. And that's our primary meal. But we're also recommended to eat smoothies and shakes and vegetables and fruit in excess, I believe. Using the plant-based nutrition and greens in a keto from time to time, and not all the time, keeps your glucose levels lower, allows the healing process to take place, and reduces glycation. Glycation is the phrase that tells us that the sugars bind to something and damage it. The number one glycation product is hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C rises. It tells us you have damage to the red blood cells, which is a marker of diabetes or prediabetes. And so, where does sugar come from? It comes from all plants. Which plants does it not come from? All plants it comes from. So that's why it's important that we can consume some sugars. They're not deadly for us in general, But if you eat them all the time, and then all the simple sugars, and then you're eating the breads, the pasta, the pastries, the pizza, those are exposing us to too much sugar and to the antigenic components like gluten, oxalates, phytates, latex. They also just bathe our body. They go to the ovaries. They damage the eggs. They damage the cells that support the egg. So now the cells can't make the granulosa cells and the luteal cells, or the supportive cells that make estrogen and progesterone, that are critical for the preparation of the uterus and implantation of that embryo. So, that's why I incorporate things like fasting. The eating infrequently or less frequently allows the blood sugar to stay lower. And then when you have your spike from a meal, you're going to easily be able to rise your insulin, convert the sugars in the liver to fat in order to build the most important thing we need, which is fat stores, but not too much.
Not too much either, right? There's that, hence the fasting, the time to clean, to rest and digest. And one thing that, bringing up is thinking about the mechanics, right? Like our body is this great organic energy machine, right? And so in our gut lining, in the blood vessels in the gut lining, there's cilia, these little fibrous bands that help with that peristalsis, right? And same in the fallopian tube, there's that peristalsis, that natural peristalsis that has to occur. And when it's weighed down with, glycation, when it's weighed down with sugar, when it's inflamed, it's sticky, stuck, and immobile. So you're not going to get that movement, that connection between sperm and egg, that you'll have constipation or irritable bowel syndrome. You'll have these things within the interruption, the mechanics of our body that's supposed to work for us as well.
The most important component of our body is the glycocalyx. And most people haven't heard of the glycocalyx. They've heard of the microbiome versus the glycobiome. So,
explain the difference.
Well, the microbiome is all the microbes that live in your gastrointestinal tract, technically, but they could be in other parts of your body also. Now, I believe they're not good for us, and I'll explain why. But the glycobiome is a sugar environment that coats every cell of your body. It coats your skin, your teeth, your mouth, your esophagus, your gut. It is the Teflon shield, actually, that keeps the microbes from getting in your body. And it also helps prevent the latex, the lectins, the oxalates, and the other antigenic components from getting into your body. So think of the bowels as outside the body. And then once they get into the epithelial surface of the bowels, they're now in your body. There is a sugar layer. That sugar layer is connected to proteins that are actually part of the lipid bilayer of the membranes of the cells. And this is the critical part of our body that people don't know about. And so it's a sugar layer, it's mucopolysaccharides. So my theory is, because we eat excessive sugars, we dissolve the lining. Like dissolves like.
Well, excessive sugars, but also all the inflammatory foods, frankenfoods, all those that, like you said, phthalate. I mean, glyphosate. I mean, that erodes that protective layer. That's decreasing that. I mean, it's breaking down our first line of defense.
And then leaky gut.
Leaky gut.
Mm-hmm. You get gastric ulcers. You develop cancers. Bowel bleeding, GERD is all produced by this. And so the microbes, mostly yeast and bacteria, which we think they're good, but they love to eat sugar. When they eat sugar, they make alcohol, heat, gas, methane. So are those things good for us? They're not. Now, we've been talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So if the microbes in the gut that are feeding on the healthy carbs are making alcohol, does that alcohol get into your bloodstream? Yep. Does
Yeah.
it go to the liver? It does.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it reminds me of um, a great lecture I had heard a while. Gosh, I can't try and remember his name, but anyway, a great lecture, and he was talking about the examples of someone who's just eating a regular dinner and maybe had one glass of wine or a one beer, and then is over the chart on their blood alcohol content. And they're like, oh, for surely you're, driving under the influence or what it might be. But it's not that. It was the microbiome producing excessive alcohol, triggered by the excess carbs that they ingested.
Right. If I said to you, here's a bottle of bacteria, yeast, and
I
viruses.
can't believe you're drinking out of a plastic bottle on my show. I'm not going to let that.
Well, I'm not
You're
in my
traveling.
home or
You're
my
traveling. I'm
office,
teasing.
but you're right.
But it's a good example.
Well, I was just coughing a minute ago and I was like, I need some water now. And so, but again, but if you're always doing this, it's not good.
Yeah.
And I drink out of a glass bottle, Gerolsteiner mostly. But my point is that if you're consuming a lot of bacteria and viruses, the question is, would you accept that as something to eat?
No.
So then why is a pill of bacteria and yeast acceptable? Can you tell me?
You mean a probiotic?
Yes. Why is it acceptable?
To reseed the destroyed microbiome, to reseed.
But that's making the assumption that the microbiome is good for us. I'm suggesting if I was to give you.
So this is confusing because what we look at with low cases of cancer, low cases of infertility, all the metabolic syndromes of the, developed Western world, when we look at some traditional tribes and cultures, we see the diversity in the microbiome is associated with less disease.
And the reason is because, okay, so if you're sick in mostly your bowels, do you have some pathogenic bacteria and yeast that have grown, correct?
Right.
Okay. So those same bacteria and yeast are actually even your normal bacteria and yeast, but they're proliferating because you're damaging your bowels because you're feeding them sugar. So you see, it's just like the cholesterol scenario, right? And being obese as the cause of disease. We doctors, we read scientific journals based on assumptions, and then we take them as fact, but they're not. What I'm suggesting is bacteria, yeast, and viruses in your bloodstream are bad. They are bad in your bowels. But we've been convinced they're good, so you should replace them. But they're not good for you. But because we all eat a standard plant-based diet, what comes with the plants? The bacteria and yeast.
Yeah.
That's correct. So, but all bacteria and yeast come from there. So when we say pathogenic, the same normal flora can also be pathogenic. Okay. So the whole point is that fermentation in your gut, how is it good for you? Well, it makes butyric acid. Well, it also makes heat, alcohol, aldehydes, methane gases, correct?
Yes.
So you're saying, well, this is good and this is bad. I question everything in science.
Yeah.
I question everything we say, even in our healthy world of keto-carnivore and naturopathic medicine. Because if that were true, where's the studies?
Yeah.
Well, they're all fostered by the companies that actually sell the probiotics. Okay. So if you're healthy and I measure your microbes, now I'm going to create a story. Well, they must be the healthy microbes. And if I find you're sick and I find a lot of bad bacteria, I'm going to blame the bad bacteria.
Well, and this is the thought of, okay, where the pendulum swung the entire other way for the last few decades, and antibiotics, killing it all off. And that didn't get us anywhere.
Well, but then we're blaming the bacteria again. But what do we feed everyone? We're feeding them a plant-based diet. You know what we feed people in the hospitals?
Yeah, I know.
It's all plant-based. It's
And
plant-based.
carb, high carb.
Well, I use the word plants because a high plant-based diet is really the thing that we need to tell our community, because the fruit, fiber, vegetable, seeds, and nuts, I mean, people are allergic to those things and they will die of anaphylactic reactions. My daughter would die from a banana and an avocado, but those are healthy for us, right? Because no one has an anaphylactic reaction to a simple teaspoon of white sugar, because the majority of the antigens are removed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a story that is hard to believe.
Yeah, fascinating way to think about it.
Because we can live without ever eating a plant, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there are no essential carbohydrates to eat, meaning there are no essential plants to eat, right?
Correct.
So there are essential fatty acids and amino acids. But we do know that
and vitamins and minerals.
Well, I'm not even going to the vitamins part of it, because most cultures that eat a fatty meat diet have no mineral and vitamin deficiencies. They all have it when they're eating a high plant-based, low-fat diet, and a non-meat diet. So when we step back and just look at our culture, and there's a lot of dictatorial nature to science and medicine. And so even me, like when I talk about the fact that glucose is not your energy, I'm chastised. Mm-hmm. But we know that fat, if you don't eat for a month, are you going to lose sugar or lose fat?
Fat.
So then how is sugar your energy?
Yeah.
Right? And then type 1 diabetics, they're fat or skinny.
Right.
They become skinny. Right?
Mm.
Type 1 diabetics.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have both, right?
Well, we're
definitely
damaging.
Had obese.
But they're the obese patient that has no insulin in their body and if they will eventually just lose fat, they will become skinny if they're not treated with insulin. Many type 2s are treated with insulin. That doesn't make them a type 1. A type 1 cannot make insulin. They become skinny. A liver failure patient becomes skinny even though they have elevated glucose levels and elevated insulin levels, because the liver is the source to make fat. And without fat, which contains cholesterol and the critical components to make your normal hormones, we've been taught don't eat that. So the glycation, again, mostly glycation, plus also the plants contain estrogen and progesterone, correct? Where did the birth control pill come from? Yams, right? So everyone's eating excess estrogen and progesterones in a plant source. Is that different than eating it from a drug pill source?
It's not in isolation. So it is, I would beg to say it is different, because it's not in isolation, and things in isolation don't exist in nature.
Well, what my point a little bit is, the estrogen and progesterones in a high amount from the plants can equally be harmful.
Can be a hormone disruptor.
Correct, because they make endocrine hormone disruptors and neurotransmitter disruptors. So again, what I'm suggesting is that this is why I think the carnivore space is the healing space, the elimination space. But many people do great on keto and paleo and adding the fat, but some people don't get healed enough, and they have to really get to the elimination and then add back some of these things potentially. Yeah. But the function of the body, I called it a Ferrari. My TEDx talk was called The Human Ferrari. We are the most expensive, valuable, and irreplaceable entities of the universe. But we treat ourselves like amusement parks, yugos, and pigs, cows, and sheep. And so that's why it's so critical you got to care for this.
Yes.
If you don't care for this, you can't care for anyone else. And my sister died of diabetes at age 52. My best friend Dave, medical school, died at 52 of lymphoma. Sarah Hallberg died at about 50 of lung cancer. I asked the question, why? Because I believe the exposure of plant antigens and the microbes that ferment in our gut and destroy the glycobiome is the leading cause of all disease, which is, again, name it: cancer, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, premature menopause, ovarian dysfunction, sperm abnormalities, male and female sexual dysfunction, depression, anxiety, ADHD, suicidality, and criminality are all related to inflammatory processes that happen in every single nook and cranny of our body.
And I mean, I would argue that what the plants are treated with, right? What they're sprayed with, what pesticides, herbicides, etc., that are part of that are ingested with that to compound the effect that what you're talking about. So now you're creating
It's
perfect storm, that erosion, right? That erosion process.
But 99.9% of actual pesticides are made by plants. And that's the part we need to realize, that if you're not getting better and you're still sick, the going carnivore is likely the best place to go. And again, it eliminates.
Like you said, it's a healing.
It allows, because you said it allows the healing to take place. I did a 5-day fast in January. I never felt better. I do typically one meal a day at night. I do a 2-day fast once a week, a 3-day fast once a month, and I'm going to do a 2 5-day fast a year. But I drink water. I eat steak. I eat some butter. I make some ice cream from time to time, but I'll have some French fries. And again, find the thing. It has some saponins and a solanase and has oxalates, which can damage my body. But if I have too much, I know it. But if I have a little bit here and there, and that's why a little bit of fruit or honey or vegetables in a day with fat. See, 80% of your calories should come from fat. Because the reason, you see, amino acids and simple sugars go to the liver, and insulin goes to the liver. Why does all the blood flow from the GI tract go to the liver? The liver's function is to convert amino acids and sugars via insulin to fat. Mm. No one eats fat. Fat in our standard American diet doesn't exist. Mm. When you eat fat, it goes to the lymphatics. It doesn't go to the liver. It goes to the lymphatics because it's the fuel your body wants and doesn't need to convert it to anything. And so it's, again, my ideas are a little not the norm.
Well, you're also not doing it in isolation, because I know you probably have experience. I know I have in the carnivore space or in the keto space. It works for a while, then it stops, or the weight gain starts, or different things. So it's not in isolation. You're doing it with meditation. You're doing with, lifestyle practices and sleep. And I call those the alkalinizing practices. Supportive, you're addressing cortisol, because cortisol is the key that unlocks the gate. When you've got more cortisol, you are breaking down exponentially right? We know that's catabolic. So it's not in isolation. Your carnivore diet is not in isolation of these lifestyle cortisol lowering, alkalinizing practices.
Yes, but for 20 years, I was doing meditation, yoga, prayer, and doing many of these other things. It was carnivore, and I've been doing it for 12 years. That changed it. So again, it's.
But do you ever flex out of carnivore? Do you ever, have a feast day or bump out of ketosis?
I don't measure anything.
Yeah.
I don't measure ketones. I don't measure my scale. I don't measure glucose levels. I don't measure anything.
And the same with your patients who are over 40 coming in for fertility. You're switching them to this, but you are measuring, you're doing measurements there. And then how you're saying, okay, stay on this for the rest of your life,
Yeah, well,
but with
I
these
tell, you know,
practices or
so many women over 40 on paleo and keto. Keto's better than paleo because it gives an explanation. They can measure it scientifically. So I think that helps a little bit. I think they're very neck and neck personally. But I tell everyone that this is the lifestyle, the life plan. Again, I was a standard eater forever, and then I was a paleo eater, and then I was a keto eater. But I personally know that if I have some extra fries, I feel it. I do a martini once in a while, maybe once a month, and I notice it a little bit. It doesn't linger for days. It's just like the next day, it's like, okay. But, we drive cars, they're deadly. I fly planes, they're deadly. We do things that are dangerous. So to say, listen, you've got to pick what's right for you.
yeah.
If you
So
have something that's going wrong and you want to fix it, fasting, fat, add more fat, simplify the carbs, minimize them and or eliminate them. And meditation and prayer and visualization, these are all things that help. But what you share, because many of the finding a green something that will help you, which may be an herbal medicine, which is likely anti-inflammatory, which I think that's what you're getting more than anything.
Yeah. They work on all the inflammatory pathways, cytokine and interleukin pathways, and supporting it from that aspect, to reduce the inflammation. That is definitely a big part of it. So,
Huge, huge.
so this like restoring ovarian function. So we say ovarian function is that marker of longevity. The longer we can keep it, like don't beg for early menopause, folks. Right? We want to maintain our ovarian function. And you're saying that, like, with this low inflammatory carnivore style diet, you're affecting you're doing repair work. I mean, this is like major repair. I'm taking you into, full on repair.
The biggest thing is you're removing the toxic components of the nutrition, the diet. By removing it, your body is saying, "Oh my God, thank you! You got rid of the toxins." See, all diseases are mostly reactions to toxic inflammatory foods. That is it. There isn't like you have thyroid disease and adrenal disease, and you have arthritis or bowel problems. They're not separate. There just happen to be, in your case, for some reason, you have a genetic environmental predisposition to that damage. But that's the mystery, that we don't really know that. But yeah, if everyone and anyone can do this, you reduce inflammation, you improve the blood flow. See, 98% of our vessels are capillaries. They're like the diameter of a blood cell. Okay. And so when those get damaged, they shrink down, they close up. You can't get blood to your endocrine organs. You can't get blood to your ovaries and testicles. You can't make the estrogen, progesterone, and also the plant estrogen and progestins. They are not normal. So when they bind to what am I thinking? My brain is a receptor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It may be turning it off, or maybe making it hyper. So again, we have to think that the glycans, or the proteoglycans, or the glycolipoproteins aren't the same as us. And if we're, did we evolve on an animal-based diet or a plant-based diet? We can argue that till
we can, and what animals ate, then we're eating their plant food, right, that they were eating. And so this is interesting, Robert, because, we think about, a lot of the histamine reactions that are having. And if for some people, red meat is going to trigger a histamine reaction. So how do you deal with that?
Well, number one, everything you eat, drink, breathe brings in foreign antigens that will react in your body. You can never stop that. There's always going to be some antigenic component of anything that comes in your body. So viruses, bacteria, yeast, and other mammals have different barcodes of glycans, like your blood type. What's your blood type? AB, or O. Well, those are glycoproteins that signal who you are. Well, a virus has a different glycobiome than you. You react to it. Bacteria and yeast do too. So some animals, they all have different ones. So red meat may be more antigenic for some than others. Cows, sheep, bison, elk, you got to find the one that's least antigenic. Fat reduces inflammation in your bowels. Have you ever noticed that butter never molds?
Yeah, and well, yeah. I don't know, my fridge. Okay. But yeah, one of the things too is that the what we ate is going to affect us too. So when you're eating your carnivore plan, are you eating grass-fed, grass-finished, or it doesn't really matter for you?
I don't. I think the scheme of the effects, it's small. Okay. So we would love to see free range, grass fed cows and sheep and herbivores, because that brings the sustainability of the world back. Right? We bulldoze all the natural habitat for the animals, and we're growing grains and all sorts of fruits and vegetables for everyone. We're shipping them around the world and saying this is healthy. It's propaganda. That's all it is. But yes, you're right. For some people, they will have more of a reaction to grain-fed, some even grass-fed, by the way, because it depends on the grass. And some people are allergic to one grass over another.
So amazing. So amazing. Really, like we just recently, not too long ago, had hazelnut-fed beef, and that was amazing. So give us a story. Walk me through a patient story in your practice that had come in, same thing, failed fertility treatment, and you approach her. Like, how is your clinic different? Like, what is your unique
we
protocol?
like to approach everyone the same, as they're beautiful, perfect, amazing human beings with respect and dignity, number one. Number two is the stories are similar, okay? And once again, remember, we've been taught that the diseases are all different in their cause, but they're not. They're all similar, all right? But it's hard to believe. And so I like to listen to their stories. I talked to a gal today, 39, trying for 8 years, has regular cycles, her tubes are open, her husband's sperm is great, and no medical issues. And she's never been pregnant on her own. So what's the cause? Most would say unexplained, idiopathic. I call it inflammatory. And 99.9% of the inflammations are caused by a plant-based, low animal fat diet and eating 3 to 6 meals a day. But that's a hard one to believe. And I say, okay, well, we'll look at your AMH level. And usually it's in the 0.5.
That's the anti-Mullerian hormone. So
that's a marker
of ovarian reserve.
Which is a marker of your likelihood of pregnancy and or your ovarian reserve. Now, that's controversial because I see women with a 0.2, very low AMH, get pregnant on their own.
What's an optimal number for AMH?
Well, 1.5 to 3. But again, as it goes higher, it's more indicative of metabolic syndrome, PCOS, which is a plant-based disorder, high plant-based, low animal fat diet, I say. And then it's okay. Well, how do we heal that? Well, you want to visualize it. You imagine it as if it is. And I ask everyone, do they believe in God? Are they religious or spiritual? Many people say, no, I don't believe in God, but I'm spiritual. And I say, well, isn't that the same as God? Because isn't the spirit of the universe the same? And we kind of go into fun conversations, because I believe that we have to understand each and every human being, where they're coming from. For some, God and their religious beliefs are very critical. So how do we meld these nutritional plans into their whether they're Muslim or they're Jewish or Christian or Hindu, because we talk about these things. And then I talk about, okay, well, what are the things that we can do? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to donor eggs or adoption? We don't want to do those. Okay, well then what can we do to work on you to improve your egg environment, your husband's sperm environment? And because even with low numbers that people say, oh, you never get pregnant, I see it happen all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Keto-carnivore. And I see keto and carnivore because, carnivore is meat only, technically, and keto is whatever you want, but it's a higher fat diet. But the problem is most people don't still do a high fat diet when it comes to keto because they just don't understand what I mean by high fat and that fat suppresses.
Yeah.
So 80% of the calories in fat, but I usually say a 1-to-1 protein to fat is a good way. One portion of fat, and then maybe the protein carbs are make up the other 50%, but eat less frequently is the critical.
Yeah, totally. Intermittent fasting, 2 meals a day, sometimes 1, sometimes 3. But when you what does that plate look like? Like, what is that fat? Like, what would be a dinner? Say you're going out to a restaurant.
I get a ribeye steak with butter on it all the time, and I make sure it's black and blue. I often I take all the grease from the pan and pour it back on. Most restaurants don't do that because they might. So if you're going to cook it, you want the heat above it so that you have a pan below to catch the fat. If you have the heat below and it's not a pan, you're going to lose all the fat. See, likely we evolved eating a lot of raw fat, I bet. Because that was the critical part. If you eat the brain, you're eating mostly fat. And if you think about it, what is every cell of your body mostly made of?
Fat.
The membranes of the outer membrane, the nuclear membrane, the mitochondrial membrane, all the membranes, including the red cell, white cell membranes, are made of fat. Mm-hmm. So really, you're eating, even plant cells, by the way, are made of fat. That's the interesting part. But I tell people focus on like bacon, eggs, butter, beef. I tell them you can have my ice cream from time to time, but it's a treat, not your all the time. Because life, this isn't meant to be painful. It's meant to be joyful. Yeah. And if you could find some joy in a little bit of ice cream it's all fat. It's eggs, a little bit of vanilla bean, and yes, I occasionally put in white sugar. Because if you're eating grass and grains, if you're eating fruits and vegetables.
You guys can find his ice cream recipe on his Instagram, on his website, in his books. He's well known for it. So I've seen you make that. Awesome.
It's fun. It's fun. Listen, whether you're
gotta have fun with that. I mean, I think that's it, right? I always say it's 10% fasting, 80% keto-green for me, and 10% feasting. So there's that flexibility. But then again, when you're dealing with something like infertility, cancer, heart disease, the diagnosis, inflammatory markers, you got to be, really look at all the modalities. And I mean, I'm in agreement with what you're saying too. And it's like, we have to work on those healing pathways, heal the cell membrane. That is the first line of defense.
Huge. The glycobiome you want to heal. See, the glycobiome is damaged by high sugar, high protein, low fat. So in your keto greens, your keto is high fat. So that's why vegan, vegetarians, Mediterraneans can do keto. And I share that with everyone, by the way, because, I got to come to you where you're at and what you would do. Because if I only take care of carnivores, there's 10%, 5% of people, maybe, maybe less. Right. So it really is important to understand high fat reduces inflammation.
And what do you tell the vegetarians, like if they're a vegetarian if they're Hindu or if they're just ethically opposed? And that's a tough one.
Well, I teach them how to do it because as a vegetarian, egg, cream, butter, cheese, I think I got all that, and ghee. Again, it's butter,
Unless
cream.
they're a vegan and they're not
Well,
doing any
the
less.
vegans, but the vegans, coconut oil, olive oil, but the same thing. You want to focus on eating more fat.
That's right.
But if you fast, oh, amazing. So you see, that's why fasting is so healing.
It is.
I'm on my 40, I'm on my 40 days of meat, salt, water, and one meal a day. All right.
So today for me starts Lent. So it's 40 days of Lent.
I
And
started yesterday because I did not want to pig out yesterday. I said,
you
nope.
don't do the Fat Tuesday? It was my
I know I do,
granddaughter's
but I had
birthday.
a huge plate of fries in front of me with my guy I went to dinner with and a friend, and it was I didn't touch them. I didn't have a glass of wine, didn't have my martini, but I think see, fasting is spiritually strengthening.
Right,
It
absolutely.
says I can do anything. And again, vegan vegetarians can do
I can
all
make
day
those
long.
hard choices. I can set those hard boundaries. I can do the hard things that are going to work for me, not against me. I agree. I think that is, why it's such an integral part of my life as well. And so I think that's beautiful. I'm fasting for dinners this Lent. So I don't want to eat anything after 4 or 5 o'clock. So really
That's
bringing that
good.
up, but like a good Mediterranean lunch, but fasting dinners instead of fasting breakfast. And for me, it's typically 2 meals a day. Sometimes less, sometimes mostly, 1 or 2 meals a day now. But I think that's part of just being flexible, changing things up to say, okay, I'm kind of stuck in this rut. What do I need to do next? What challenge? And have you done any dry fasting?
I've done a day or two, but mostly I drink the water. I drink salt water, mineral water. I
Mhm.
don't know that it matters so much. When I'm fasting, I love to put salt in my tongue, and
Yeah.
that helps a lot. Helps a lot. But I think look at the beauty of the problem with most animals don't eat variety, by the way. Most animals eat the same thing. See, variety is deadly. You can't have boyfriends and girlfriends on the side of your partner. It doesn't work. And that's one of the challenges. I say, well, you want variety, but that's part of the death nail in the coffin, essentially, for many people. Well, I want variety. I need it. Well, that's where the antigens show up. They show up and they're sneaky.
Well, but then
Especially
you have the absolute opposite where people are only able to eat like lettuce or only able to eat these few handfuls. So we have to go through that healing, that
oh
retraining and that tolerance. And when I mean,
yeah.
there's extremes to all this. And it's,
Look, I'm not talking about in the healing part of the
yeah,
work part. What I'm saying is in a general global part,
yeah.
no animal gets variety. Variety is an amusement park life. You live in a temple. So you find the few 5 or 10 things you
Well, other
regularly.
than seasonal varieties, I mean, you have your natural seasonal varieties in the
Well,
animal kingdom too.
well, maybe a cow versus an antelope. But again, I'm throwing a concept that
Yeah, yeah, I know. I like you know how I am.
I'm 67.
Like you, gonna question everything.
Remember, I'm 67. I question it all. All right. I'm a Mediterranean Italian. Okay. So I lived it until 55 when I changed it, and it was like, boom, everything went away.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
So my friend died at 52. He was the healthiest guy I've ever known. So the problem with plants is they're predatorily sneaky and silent, and they will cause cancer, and they're silent for years before it then takes you down. That's my story again.
Yeah, yeah,
But again, each of us chooses our lives. But
yeah,
if you want to know the cause of disease, I will tell you simply, it's a plant-based, low animal fat diet and eating 3 to 6 meals a day,
yeah.
which is not the very best for us.
So tell our audience how they can get in touch with you and connect with you and get your ice cream recipe and
So don't follow Kiltz. Just call Dr. Kiltz and go to drkiltz.com. I have fun with this, and you want to have fun with it. I'm not hardcore in the sense of you better not do that. But just go
well,
to Dr.
you've been like there's times, especially when you're like, oh my gosh, you're vigilant, you're hyper vigilant, and you're like, ah, this is this is the thing that worked for me. I mean, I definitely found that in my own journey. It's like works, okay, then something stops working. We need to take a side step and then come back to it. But, so it's like, I think it's important to share. It's important to share and then to question, just like what we're discussing today. I always tell my audience, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, but, ask, try.
Yeah.
You're not going, nothing like we said is going to hurt you. And what if it helps you? What if it's your next right step?
I grew up in Los Angeles, migraines, bowel problems, couldn't read. I was kicked out of school because I was in a gang and we committed a robbery. Not a robbery, it was a vandalism with a bunch of.
I don't know if I can talk to you anymore now.
But what I can tell you is, as an adolescent, preteen, my parents were not vigilant, and because I couldn't read, because I was bullied. Again, we can go and find lots of stories why. I'm not proud of it, but I'm proud that I was able to get the mentors that helped me through it. Exactly. But then I developed all the diseases, and I know the cause. Even I will go back and tell you my criminality and my other problems were secondary to a plant-based diet.
Well, and it's like in Detroit, Michigan, the crime rate, the anger, all of that is lead. I mean, we have the lead based, the high lead, and so if we're creating, we're hurting our machinery by many of the environmental toxins that we're exposed to, that also create gateways and lack of defense for other,
But we're taught that it's healthy for us, and that's the problem. We are taught that fiber is good, fruits and vegetables are good, and cereals are good.
Well, that fiber decreases your colon cancer and helps with, but again, like in the carnivore, it's low fiber and you can improve your bowel function.
But remember, fiber in the gut makes alcohol, methane, and heat and gas. Would you put steel wool in your bowels?
No.
Fiber. So again, I too was taught that and believed that. Burkitt of Burkitt's Lymphoma wrote a story because he believed it, but it's not true. And Paul Mason did a really good talk on fiber and how GERD, bleeding, everything goes away. And so again, I think simple sugars are better for you than complex sugars, but it's opposite. That's the trouble.
Yeah.
And then when it's opposite of what we've heard, what's our general approach? Right? We in medicine have been taught, well, I can tell you why I believe that, but it took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, no, and it's work. You see it work in your patients. You see it work in your life.
I see it work everywhere. And that's the difference, because I believe the propaganda of marketers that are making money on a plant-based, high plant-based, low animal fat diet, and then between Warren Buffett sells Coca-Cola and McDonald's. Is that good for our children or adults? We know it's not.
Right.
And we're pushing a plant-based world that's basically making a fake meat, which is made out of plants, which is all what? Sugar. It's all sugar. And so my passion is, after I see too many people dying, young and sick, as a fertility doctor, I see the change. And I'm compelled, because I decided to be a doctor to help people. The only way to do that is to do it online.
Yeah. To reach more people and to keep spreading the word. And thank you for what you're doing. I so appreciate you and appreciate the work you're doing in infertility and in lifestyle. And thank you for sharing your keto-carnivore lifestyle with us and the multi dimensions of that. So I appreciate your perspective, and that you do bring in Eastern and meditation and prayer and all these, and fasting, such critical components. Like, we cannot take one without the other. And I look forward to continuing our conversation in the future. We'll have a lot more to talk about. I know we could spend hours. Thank you, Dr. Robert Kiltz, you guys. Dr. Kiltz, just Google him, follow him on Instagram, and check out his website, everyone. Thank you for being here today, and thank you again. This has been an interesting conversation, and we can go steep into one avenue or look at it as worth a try. Let's try keto-carnivore for some time together. But the principles are the same that I've been sharing with you. The concept of keto-green with intermittent fasting, no more snacking, low carbohydrate, eliminating eliminating sugars, eliminating the unnecessary sugars, and healing the gut, healing the GI tract. I will say men and women are different, but there's different stages of healing. And I still am passionate about the importance of fat in our diet for our hormone production. So Dr. Kiltz really emphasized that as well in his fertility practice, that fat piece, making sure that we are getting enough fat in our diets and high quality protein. And it does matter what our food was treated with, sprayed with, what we ate. Those things do matter, but don't let that hang you up or keep you from pursuing the lifestyle that best suits your physiology, your stage of life, and your goals. So I'm here along the journey with you, and I look forward till next time. Thank you for being here.